You're listening to The Whole Truth, a Resources Rising Stars podcast.
Hello and welcome back to The Whole Truth podcast. I'm Paul Armstrong. PolarX is a junior copper gold explorer on the ASX with a market cap of about $40 million. The company's just done a cracking deal with Northern Star Resources that'll see Northern Star spend up to 60 million Aussie dollars for a 70% stake in the company's Alaska Range project. It's the sort of deal that will make PolarX's peers go green with envy. Life can be very hard in exploration land. Raising money on the ASX for copper projects overseas is not easy, and it doesn't matter what happens, you're always seen as being come raise between one drilling program and the next. It's a very difficult cycle, but Mark Bojanjac is the executive chairman of PolarX, and he tells us today how he came to do this deal, how delighted he is, but most importantly, the value it could create for PolarX shareholders. As he points out, if they find something that's big enough to move the needle for Northern Star, imagine what that does to the value of your PolarX shares. Mark takes us through the deal, what they're going to do on site to grow this project where they already have a significant resource, and another gold project they have down in Nevada called the Humboldt Range. Have a listen to this and see if you think it'll make other companies go green with envy. Mark, thanks for joining us today. There's an old adage in this exploration game that you're better to have 30% of something really big than 100% of something really small. You've clearly applied that logic here in your deal with Northern Star.
Very much so. And I think one of the things that many might miss is the fact that it is Northern Star, and they are in country, and they understand Alaska. They know how to build a mine, they can finance one internally. So there's a lot more to it than just partnering up with a bigger partner. You know, it's pretty well a dream partner for an outfit like us to find somebody that's already in country, that's young enough in an organisation that they've built mines themselves from ground up. Not many of the majors have, right? Northern Star's done that all in the last 15 years. So they get where we are as well. I think that's important.
Now, there's a trend here across the particularly the copper space, if you like. We saw it with some of the recent M&A activity. Bigger companies seeing there's an opportunity to get a position in a project that's already got a resource, whether it's a low-grade porphyry resource or, in your case, a higher-grade resource, but would benefit from some more scale. They can see an opportunity to get into those things. The markets aren't necessarily giving companies like PolarX true value, and they can come along with a checkbook and say, look, you guys have a track record in the small space of finding things. Big companies, history shows, aren't particularly good greenfields explorers, but they do have big checkbooks. Smaller companies like PolarX find it hard to raise that money. You're always seen as come raise.
Correct. The
news flow can be very slow. You know, you drill half a dozen holes, you wait for that, you get the assays. No sooner do you get the assays and put them out, the market says, well, that's lovely, but you come raise again. And it's very hard to break that cycle, isn't it?
You've just summed up the entire junior market on ASX at the moment. You know, it's precisely that for nearly all of them. And I sort of went into, it's a while ago now, almost 18 months ago, into the coming January, and it didn't look like it was going to be a good year ahead. Northern Star were already a 10 or 12% partner or a shareholder of us at that stage. So I thought to myself, look, from a holistic point of view, we have something that's actually too big for us, with a financing capacity that's too small for it, in that the ASX just does not have the depth to deliver the financing that this project needs. Now, to put that in perspective, we've got 35 kilometres of strike length there. That is basically from here to Kalamunda, and we have all of it. So it's a big patch.
Minus the steep hill.
Well, it's steeper than Kalamunda, I can tell you that. Our largest soil anomaly is 11 kilometres by 8, which is a huge patch of ground. I mean, that's nearly 9,000 hectares. Again, in perspective, Kings Park dials in at 400, right? So a bigger soil anomaly is 20 times Kings Park. We haven't even drilled that. You know, what we've done necessarily is been forced to drill what's already visible, that people 50, 60 years ago could identify and pushed along slowly, into something that's at least a hub of economics. You know, something that you could, make into a tangible business unit.
So you've had to target, by virtue of your limited financial resources, those areas that in an exploration sense give you better odds of success, so that you get more chance of getting a bang for your buck.
Correct. Almost sing for your supper. And what that's meant is we've been focused on things that could deliver shorter term economics, because that's what ASX investors want to hear, but unable to focus on big picture. Yet we have a big picture project, most of which has never been explored other than soil sampling.
Your drilling was successful, though. I mean, let's go back 2 steps for our listeners here, Mark. The Alaska Range project that Northern Star is farming into has a significant resource on it, gold, copper and some silver. And in the process, you've done a scoping study which said the project will generate very strong returns. The IRR was circa 70%, wasn't
Correct, yeah. And that's at metals prices from 2 years ago.
Yeah, so gold price of less than $2,000 an ounce or something. So
exactly.
If as I say, you've had success with that strategy, but it's given you, in the grander scheme of things, limited scale.
Yeah, I think, you're always going to get a discount as a junior, even with a very tangible high-grade project, because it has back-end execution risks. You've got to finance it. What's it going to look like by then? You've got to infill drill it. Takes a lot of money to do that as well. You've ultimately got to build it, hedge quite a lot of it, because financing it usually takes that for a junior to get there. Now, partnering up with a large outfit, you miss all of that.
Yes. Yeah.
They can finance it internally.
Right.
They don't need to hedge.
So let's look at what you've done. Northern Star's got the right to earn up to 70% of the Alaska Range project, which includes all that strike you were talking about, all the blue sky exploration you haven't been able to test, as well as the existing resources that are well established. They can get 70% of that project for spending up to 60 million Aussie dollars on it. What do they like about it?
I think they see what we see. And, you should never pick what somebody else thinks about something. But
they must like something. They're prepared. They're putting millions of dollars of their shareholders' money on the table
on one of their very few ever joint ventures, right? So they see what we see. And when you look at it, if you looked at it and could afford to attack it both regionally and develop the existing resources into something larger, so it'll be even more profitable, you can't really go.
So there's two avenues here.
Correct.
One is about growing the known mineralisation, the area around the resource, so genuine brownfields exploration, but also having the pockets to be able to go and drill some of these targets along that 35-kilometre corridor that you referred to.
Exactly. And look, the market wouldn't have appreciated this until 2 days ago when we announced the deal, or yesterday, in fact. But year one of the joint venture, we're already on, right? We're out there now. The first thing we did was flew, and I'm not making this up, 3,500 kilometres of helicopter lines up and down that project.
So you hit it with geophysics already?
Yeah, we did. We approached it like a big company would. We've never been able to afford to do that before. So, there's $500,000 spend there.
Luxury.
It developed, a LiDAR capture and some magnetic data, the likes of which, you'd dream for the entire 35 Ks now. So, that started with that. In addition to that, we've had a fortnight of helicopter time with 4 high-level geologists just on that. Not on the rig crew, separate crew, just on regional stuff. And I can tell you some exciting stuff. We've never laid a boot on.
But you've never been to get back to that sort of first principle exploration?
Never been able to, because at the end of the day, ASX would never reward you for arm waving. There's a lot of us doing that, right? Yeah. And you'd want to be a very good one to outclass the next arm waver.
And the problem, of course, with that is that if the ASX doesn't reward you, to say essentially that's code for saying investors won't increase your share price. And if you don't have a decent share price, you can't raise a big slab of money.
So you don't get a go at it.
So round and round you go in ever declining circles.
Precisely. So look, we took a view a couple of years ago. Drive your project development with scoping studies. It tells you a lot. It takes a lot of what-ifs out of it. Now, we reckoned several things that we disproved during the scoping study. We jumped a few hurdles that, we thought might be insurmountable too by improving metallurgy and so on. So we were able to at least show what we have is very tangible. The 5% surface copper at Caribou Dome pays for a plant in just over a year. It's very, very attractive stuff when you get into it. And you're able to demonstrate just how valuable that is per vertical metre on mining. Now, we are probably at Caribou Dome one of the highest grade copper undeveloped projects anywhere. Although some of the stuff in Africa you'd never know, but hey, we're in USA, right? Good old solid America, in an environment where they want copper, gold, silver production at the moment.
Copper's just been added to the critical minerals list in the US.
It has, and so it should be too. So they want homegrown too, right? And we're exactly that.
Right. So the planets are lining up for you here. Northern Star, has to be said, was already a 16% shareholder in PolarX before this deal.
Yes.
It is your biggest shareholder, so they're obviously pretty familiar with what they're doing. They've done more DD, I take it, on before committing to the farming deal.
Yeah, well, technical DD first up, legal DD second, and I'm happy to say it was exactly as advertised.
Right.
From our perspective.
So they've come out of that process and said, "Hey, we'll agree to this deal. We want to spend the money," but they're giving you the check. They're writing the checks, but you're retaining the operating role.
We're running it. So from here to 50%, PolarX is definitely in charge. Like, we're in the driver's seat as operator manager. Beyond that, Northern Star can, if it wants to, be the operator. And to be honest with you, beyond 50%, we may well be more engineering and mining studies focused than geology. I hope not, but we may well be. And if so, who better to be manager than them? They may or may not elect to do that. If they don't, then we'll keep doing it.
But presumably, as you get about your business as operator, and obviously you know the project better than anyone, and your people, they will offer. They've said that they will give you technical assistance as required.
They have been already. We've had the benefit of several of their team looking at this over the last few months. Now, not something we'd ever published previously and couldn't, but that's been going on, and it's been helpful too. From a holistic perspective, right? And they're pointing us to do things we probably wouldn't have done otherwise. We are relogging every stick of core on site. So it's all been trucked to Wasilla, and over winter, we'll have 2 geologists on that for months, relogging everything. Not looking for mineralisation necessarily, but looking for the key things that lead to it and what signs tell you you're near your mineralisation. Which side of it are you?
So they're going to do the dull, but help you with the dull but worthy stuff.
Well, that was something they were fairly insistent on doing, and I can see it could really help us spatially, particularly with something complex like Caribou, to determine where you are in the system each time you put a hole in, whether it's a good hole or a bad hole. It'll tell you, where you are.
Right.
In relativity to the mineralisation itself. So there's a lot of work being going on in the background that is big picture.
How seasonal is the work up there, Mark? Can you push through the northern winter?
Well, everybody does that mines, right? From an exploration point of view, you could certainly do it, and some of them even prefer it, strangely, but you could push through all of winter if you're doing a drill out. But when you're on broad scale, it wasn't noticed yesterday. You need to be able to see it. Now, one of the reasons we flew the chopper at the time was detailed photography down to 6 by 6 inches that you can see 24/7 because you've already captured the data. Now, what that's meant really is you can pinpoint really interesting stuff looking at that, and then know where to go to have a look at it on the ground. And we've started doing that over the last 4 weeks on site.
Now you mentioned
it's been really telling. It really has helped.
You mentioned at the outset that one of the key benefits here is that Northern Star's in country, so they've got the Pogo gold mine that they bought many years ago on Bill Beamon's watch. It took them a while to get really across it, but it seems to be firing now. Are they looking at this as a part of the Pogo? It's a fair way from Pogo, isn't it? So presumably they're looking for something of scale in their own right.
Yeah, it's a couple of hundred kilometres by road. Not that geologically is very far, but realistically, the process for Caribou and Zackley together, if they turn out to be the most major deposits, is different to what they do at Pogo. We would, as we currently understand the asset, be creating a flotation concentrate. And that'd be trucked down to or shipped down to one of the lower states within the US for processing ultimately. So it's a different process to making gold with a CIL plant, which Northern Star have at Pogo.
Right. So moving away from the Alaska Range and just quickly from the Alaska Range project and the farm in Mark, PolarX also has the Humboldt Range project.
We do.
That's outside of the JV.
Yeah, that's 100% ours. It's really interesting. And to be honest with you, we just had that, we'd be happy with that alone, right? It is surrounded by heap leach operations. Now, I don't know whether listeners know Nevada much, but all of the US majors are based there. In fact, it's unusual for Northern Star not to be yet, because all of the others are. And they're on large-scale, modest grade, and some of them low-grade operations with very, very low operating costs. And a lot of it is actually heap leaching, which is not something you see much of in Australia. But
it is coming back into vogue, isn't it, slowly?
Some operations, yeah, as the gold prices got higher, it's viable for some of them that mightn't have otherwise have been. But Nevada has been viable since the 80s. And we're surrounded by 3 of them. We literally, 1 mile down the hill from us, 1.5 k's, is Florida Canyon, a 5 million ouncer. We're on a patch of dirt on the hill that hasn't been explored for 100 years. Now, the whole area was mined 100 years ago by lots of smaller outfits. In fact, if you see the old photos, there's all of the things you would have seen in Kalgoorlie at the turn of the century were there in the day. But very little has been pursued since, except Florida Canyon next to us, Rochester, about 15 miles south of us, on a 400 million ounce silver heap leach operation, which even has another 3 million ounces of gold credits to it. And between that and us, in fact, right up against us, is a new one, which is, we think at the moment, based on its recently published study, about 4 or 5 million ounces. It's an $800 million startup, US. They announced they do have financing package for that in July. So there's a new one immediately south of us starting up. So we're in a really hot area in Humboldt Range, and we're the one patch of it that hasn't had much work. We've done a little ourselves, obviously, over the last couple of years. We realised early on that, notwithstanding the original owners of our patch had always chased high-grade veins, and there's literally hundreds of them. Some of these things in the hundreds or even thousands of grams per tonne. But like all high-grade mining, it's hit and miss. You don't want to blow your brains out on mine dilution, etc., if you can avoid it. The thing about Nevada, though, is, and these trends they have, this Carlin-style mineralisation is everywhere. It doesn't matter where you drill, you get 0.2 to 0.4 grams a tonne. In fact, the head grade of both of our nearest neighbours is 0.4 grams per tonne.
So what's your plan here to try and join the party?
With that in particular, we will go and drill that. We know we're going to hit high-grade veins. We've done that before. We know it's everywhere. We cut a trench across it and got, I think, just under 70 metres at 1.1 in surface depleted material. Now, it's 1.1 in the face of neighbours mining head grade 0.4, right? And on top of that, you've got a frequency of high-grade quartz veins, which could carry anything. So the average will be really interesting. It's RC drilling, so it's a little cheaper. It's drill ready. Our plan is to get on to that straight after Alaska this year and go and find out, exactly what it is. See what the average grade per hole actually is on the top of that hill.
Well, Mike, it sounds like you've got plenty on the go. This deal with Northern Star obviously has the potential to create huge value. I mean, the market cap of circa $40 million. You've got great leverage here, and Northern Star obviously sees plenty to like about the project. Otherwise, it wouldn't have done this deal. And you can run your own show down at the Humboldt Range. They're nice stable mates.
They are very nice stable mates. And look, at the end of the day, from their perspective, they're looking for something that's big enough for them, right? We have something that wouldn't be quite big enough for them in Alaska yet, but it certainly could be. And if you've got something that would move the gauge for them, it's certainly going to move the needle for us, regardless of percentage.
That's right. So back to my point at the beginning, 30% of something that moves the needle for Northern Star is worth a hell of a lot more than 100% of what you've got. On
top of the fact that the execution risk of doing it has been jumped because they can deliver those things at the back end. And I think that's what most people have missed so far.
Well, we look forward to following this
and
getting some news flow out. Must feel good walking around knowing that you've got someone like Northern Star behind you. That's an enormous tailwind for a small company. Well done on the deal. I suspect many of your peers are going British racing green with envy just Thinking about the size of the checkbook you've now stuck your mitts into.
That complimentary in this game.
and we'll chase you up later on to see how it's going. Thanks very much.
Thanks for your time.
You've been listening to The Whole Truth, a Resources Rising Stars podcast, produced by Resource Media, hosted by Paul Armstrong for Reed Corporate. Please note that Reed Corporate does not provide investment advice, and investors should seek personalised advice before making any investment decisions.